What a great little story this is. I mean, this is one of those stories that's short and packed with interesting stuff. And you always know a good story by the questions that pop into your mind. You don't want a story that has all the answers. You want a story that engages your questioning mind. Well, what about this? And I wonder what this is, so that you can find yourself woven. You find a path into the story through the questions you're asking. The first question I had was, how did this woman get in the door? Right? Two things that strike me. First, that she's there at all at a table with men. How did she get in the door? She's a woman from the city who is a sinner. Now, I just want to break here. I was reminded this week, I was taught this week, I didn't know this before, that a story of a woman washing Jesus' feet or anointing his feet is in every one of the Gospels. So we may be thinking right now, it's Mary Magdalene, and she put ointment on it. Judas said, save, that money could have been spent on something else. It's not the same story. Okay? It's like those stories. But this isn't Mary Magdalene. This isn't foreshadowing Jesus' death like in the other Gospels. This is a woman who's a sinner. We don't know what kind of sin. She could have been divorced and hanging around with another man. There's just a bunch of things that could be about her sinfulness, or she could be a hooker. We're not sure. But she's a sinner from the city, and she sneaks her way into the Pharisee's house, and it says she's standing behind his feet. She is standing behind his feet, washing them with her tears. So just figure that one out for a second. How do you stand behind someone's feet? Well, they'd have to be above you, raised up somehow. So maybe Jesus is at a table in a raised up area. But how do you wash a person's feet from behind with your tears? You ever think of that? How is that? That's the one that popped in my mind right away after, how did she get in there? How is she washing his feet from behind? He's reclining at table. So I'm just guessing. I don't know this for a fact. I haven't checked this with the Greek scholars or anything, but I'm imagining they're on a raised dais, and they're reclining at table. Okay? You got it? With the grapes in the finger. Every so often Jesus is like this, reclining at the table, and he's eating the grapes. And they're reclining, so she's somewhere back here, and that makes sense. She's washing his feet. They're from back there, right? That's what I'm guessing. Oh, you're into the story now, aren't you? With that handy visual. Every great educator uses great visuals. You won't get that one out of your mind for a while. So they're reclining at a table as men in first century Palestine did. But it's a men's only group. That's what supper was like, especially at a Pharisee's house. And the Pharisees, you remember, in this passage from last week, is the same passage. Jesus had just kind of said about their believing and they felt good about their baptism in John, but they weren't sure about Jesus, and they're like children calling in the street who nothing was good enough for them, right? And he'd already been addressing the Pharisees. Next scene, he's at a Pharisee's house for dinner. It wasn't uncommon. Jesus ate with Pharisees. If he didn't, but he ate with lepers and tax collectors, it would seem like reverse prejudice against the people who are prejudiced. So that doesn't fit in the kingdom of God. So he's at a Pharisee's house for dinner, and a woman is snuck in the back. I'm imagining a dais like this to come on here, and there's a curtain behind, and she's just kind of, she looks like kitchen help, but she's that kind of woman. But then she sneaks in behind the curtain, and she gets behind Jesus' feet. Next thing you know, she's weeping on them, and she's wiping them with her hair, and then she brings out ointment, and she's putting ointment on Jesus' feet. And Deb and I had this great conversation yesterday about feet in first century Palestine. The people of ancient world would not recognize our feet. They look so nice. And I'm not a big feet person in the first place, but ours would look, they're not beat up, bruised, scarred, injured, gnarly, from walking around in sandals or barefoot, right? So ointment is really like this is a healing thing. She's brought ointment to not just wash Jesus' feet, but maybe help heal them, give some salve, some balm to his tough life, which was outdoors. He was outdoors his whole life. Then, now that we find our way in, what happens? The host It says, thinks to himself. This is an interesting piece of scripture when it says, and they were thinking to themselves or talking amongst themselves or thinking to themselves. It happens just every so often. And this Pharisee thinks to himself, well, he can't be much of a prophet. Because if he was a prophet, he'd know what kind of woman she is. Right? If he's a prophet, he knows stuff instantly about people in their lives. So, like, what's up with this guy? He can't be much of a prophet. Then Jesus knows what this guy's thinking. Right? So he kind of proves that he's a prophet by recognizing what the guy's thinking inside his head. And he says this striking line. This is where it all turns. Right here. We're going along. There's this weeping and foot washing. And this guy says, you can't do it. Simon. It didn't say he went to Simon the Pharisee's house. It didn't say he went to a Pharisee's house and his name was Simon. This is the first time Simon's name is used. And when you name somebody in ancient times, it's a power. You know, sometimes you just see in ancient myths, they'll say, give me your name. I will not give you my name. Don't give your name to a wizard. Because then they got power over you. Right, Carol? Yeah, Carol knows that. Everybody knows that. Don't give your name to a wizard or an ogre or someone evil, because they have power over you. Same in the New Testament. Happens. Names are powerful. He says, Simon, first time. Simon, come here, I got something I want to tell you. Simon says, teacher, speak. Pretty gutsy. Most people are like, Jesus, I don't want to hear what you have to say to me. Right? If Jesus showed up today and said, I got something to tell you, we'd be like, I don't know if we want to hear it. We've been reading about you. And we're not too comfortable with what you say. But Simon's pretty bold. And at this point, they're teachers. They're religious teachers. Even Steve and these guys. They both believe in the teachings of Moses. They're trying to purify it for the world. Simon, I got something I want to tell you. So, teacher, speak. Well, there was a creditor, and he had two debtors, and one owed 500 denarii, and one owed 50. And he decided to forgive them both. Which one would love him more? Simon says, well, of course, the guy who owed 500, it's a bigger debt. He's going to be doing the Snoopy dance in the streets. He's so happy. Right? Hopping and skipping. And that's right. Well, this woman, who you say is such a sinner, has felt God's love in such a big way that she's responding to that love through her hospitality. And by the way, Simon, I want to talk about the thinking to himself part. The recognizing God's love part. Because the first crisis in this is that this woman recognizes God's love and Simon doesn't. That's the first lesson. How to see God's love. What gets in the way. The talking to himself part is very interesting. There's a scholar apparently who's written a whole book about this. The talking to yourself pieces of the Bible. And she reminded me this week about the dangers of self-talk. Let's call it our internal narrative or our internal story. The stuff we say to, Dr. Phil. I only watched Dr. Phil once when he was on Oprah. I'm not a big fan of Dr. Phil, but back in the day, he actually had something good to say, and he said this. Your parents are the first people to take a crack at the script of your life, and they start writing on it the minute you're born. Lisa's going to think this, Molly's going to think this about herself, right? And when you're 50, 55, you're wandering down the street telling yourself stuff about yourself. Sometimes, far too often, it's what our moms said about us. Right? There's an internal story, a narrative, that we tell ourselves about our life and about ourselves. And it rolls almost subconsciously, unconsciously inside of us. And there's stories we tell about other people in our minds. And there's stories we talk about in our heads about our lives and the way the day is going and what life looks like and what we believe. But we have codes and creeds that keep spinning inside of our head. That's Simon. He couldn't see God's love in Jesus. He had a narrative going on his head that blocked that. And this scholar was just saying, Jesus, by calling his name out, Simon, draws him back out of the internal narrative of negativity into, I'm going to challenge this, Simon. I'm calling you both. Let's bring this into God's light and have the conversation. Speaking of internal narrative, I just want to say something I've said to a lot of wedding couples and was taught to me a number of years ago. Feelings aren't true, right? I'm like, what? This is what a counselor said. Feelings aren't true. But I'm like a big feeling guy, so I think feelings are actually the story, right? It must be exactly how I feel it's going. This story is going down the way. Every feeling we have is planted by a story or something we told ourselves already. It just happens so fast we don't always notice it. So it's always a good exercise to try and slow down and say, well, I know you're feeling that in your gut, but what's the thought that planted that feeling? What's the feeling, a reaction or response to, right? It's very tricky because feelings come on us with such a wave sometimes that we can't imagine there was any thinking. It's not logical thinking, but it's something. That's the power of our internal narrative. I wonder what it was that hit Simon that day, that he got thinking to himself, this guy isn't a prophet, and this is all wrong, and why did I invite him to lunch, and this is, he just started going with a gut feeling that was blocking his understanding of God's love. It was blocking his ability to see God's love. What is it that we tell ourselves daily? What is our story? What are the words that come to mind that are keeping us from seeing God's love? Like Simon. I'm not good enough. I don't have enough. So-and-so is upset at me. I don't know what to do. I'm sad about this. There's grief I haven't talked about. Like, what is the story we tell each other? That's what this Simon guy brings us to. What is it that hurts us in our internal dialogue with ourselves that keeps us from welcoming God's love? And on the other side of that, I'm just wondering how free this woman was, although she was a sinner and lived a tough life and a horrible life. And we know many people like this who are battered, bruised, and upset, who are living in the worst conditions in the world, and they seem way more open to God's love than us. Somehow their internal dialogue, their self-story, their self-talk is different than ours. I wonder why that's true. Then the crisis point comes as Jesus points out all the hospitality that this woman provided that Simon forgot to provide. And he says it in a list. You didn't offer me water to wash my feet. She's weeping on my feet. You didn't offer me the brotherly kiss when I came in the door like you should have. She hasn't stopped kissing my feet this whole time. You didn't anoint my head with oil like a prophet should have when he walks into a home. She's been anointing my feet constantly. Your hospitality is a failure, Simon. Right? You just listen. Bang, bang. I don't know why Simon forgot this. I mean, washing a person's feet in first century Palestine was just like basic. Like that's a man shows up in your house, people come, wash your feet. Okay, by people I mean women. Hate to say it. Women come, they wash your feet, they get the dust off, they clean your feet. It's a relaxing thing, it's a hospitality thing, it's a loving thing. You greet brothers in God with a kiss. These are just I don't know what was up with Simon this day. He was a mess. I don't think it was like, oh, Jesus, I don't like him. He invited him to dinner. There's just something in the forgetfulness. There's some block. There's some apathy. There's something about Simon that I can't get my hands on that kept him from these key pieces of hospitality. And this woman's doing it in spades. Like she's just like all over them. And Jesus points it out. So not only does she recognize God's love, immediately she responds to God's love through loving others. Jesus teaches this parable about forgiveness and God's love, and in so doing says that those who can't recognize God's love find it hard to share God's love. Those who recognize God's love and forgiveness in their lives abound with love. This woman was loved so much by God, and she realizes it, and look at the love she has given and the hospitality she's given, Jesus says. Each little thing that she does is a symbol for all of us about how we could respond. And let's just say you've been looking at these images. Look at that. Just Google Luke 7:40. Luke 7:40, say, right in the middle of the story. And hit images on Google. It'll come up. And there are a lot of images I didn't pick because they're almost too intimate. They have an undertone of intimacy, and it made me as a good Christian in Canada a little uncomfortable. This woman with her hair draped over Jesus' feet. It's tough to look like. Each thing she does is like this intimate, passionate, bold, deep, loving thing that should help us reflect on how we're acknowledging God's love and responding to God's love. How could we be known as a community of feet washers? I don't really mean feet washing. I mean the depth of hospitality that foot washing represents. I was trying to think of a cool name for Mayfair United Church that would have to do with feet washing, right? But there isn't. It's hard to put together. There's no one word for foot washing. Well, maybe there is in Latin, but there isn't in English. So, but when people drive by, imagine if they said, "Oh, there's that foot washing church." They are big on hospitality. Not, "There's the best turkey supper in town," because we know they say that. What if they said, there's that foot washing community. There's that community that just when you walk in the door, they love you so much it's as if they bent down and washed your feet. What if they drove by and they said, "There's that foot kissing church. Feet kissers. Feet Kisser United Church." Imagine. They said, imagine. Feet Kisser United Church. Imagine. They went by and they said, "There's that church where you walk in the door, you are so loved, it's as if they washed your feet, wiped them with their hair, and kissed them all over like baby's feet." You know, you kiss baby's feet because you love them so much. The hardest thing about Baptism Sunday is not just spending an hour kissing little baby's feet. They're so cute. That's what we do. Imagine if they said that about us. There's a foot kissing church. Driving us crazy. The Lutherans would be going snake. Or those feet anointers. Not anointers. Ointmenters. That's the word I have here. I made up a new word. Ointmenters. There's those feet ointmenters. So tired of those Mayfair United Church and their feet ointment need. Imagine foot healers. Imagine if people went by and they said, "There's that church that not only loves you and brings you in with hospitality that's so intimate and loving and wonderful, like foot washing and foot kissing. They said, but they also help us with healing. There's that church that heals people through that grandiose godly love that they share." Imagine Foot Ointmenters United Church. Balm of Gilead. Salve of Saskatoon United. There it is, Salve of Saskatoon. I never know how to say that word. S-A-L-V-E. Salve of, that reminds me of salvation. We must dig in with our whole selves. Reminds me of the phrase that Deb has used often. Take off your bib, put on an apron. Let's dig in to God's Word. Stop being His fed. Put on the apron and get messy, right? If we can just find out how it is we're not recognizing God's love, what is it that's blocking us? What are we telling ourselves? And then once we figure that, we acknowledge God's great love and forgiveness. It's like 500 denarii being forgiven. And then we respond like this woman, and we have hospitality and healing with such depth and passion and joy. And let's remember her courage. Take off that bib, put on an apron, dig in. Let's go. Let's get ready in response to this wondrous, wondrous love. Amen.